Hey guys, welcome back to Plex and Tech. Well, today I'm going to be doing a really cool $150 budget gaming PC build. I think this is going to be something that is going to be appealing to a lot of people who don't have a lot of money to spend, but I want to be able to do some light gaming. And this should be able to fit that bill pretty well, especially 720p and even 1080p video games in the esports titles. I think this will do really well. So for the PC, I'm using a Dell Optiplex 5050. Now I picked this up off eBay for $69.99, ship free. I mean, that's absolutely amazing for a PC. It's pretty much almost complete. It looks like it's barely been used. The insides, as you'll see here in a moment, it's spotless. So either someone cleaned it up really well, the seller on eBay, or the company that sold these to the seller. Now this features a 7th generation i5-7500 4-core 4-thread CPU. Now if you look around on YouTube, you'll see a lot of these budget Dell Optiplex gaming builds. They have 4th, 3rd, or sometimes even 2nd gen processors, much older, much longer in the tooth than this one. So this is going to be much better for gaming. And again, this was $69.99. Ship free, so there's no shipping cost like you see on some of these. So out of the pocket, a little over 70 bucks on this. Now besides the CPU, you get 8 gigs of DDR4 RAM. It doesn't come with the DDR3 like those older ones would have. So also that's going to be much better for gaming. Now 8 gigs is not great, but it's just fine for Windows 10 because this comes with a spin drive, a laptop drive in it, a 500 gig. There's no OS on it, because there is an M.2 slot on this, being that it's much newer. So you can just slap a really cheap M.2 drive in there for your OS, and then use that 500 gig drive for storage. But if you want to absolutely stick to the $150 budget, you could use that 500 gigabyte spin drive in there. But again, there's no OS loaded, because it probably what happened is the company that sold these probably pulled the M.2 drives that had Windows 10 Pro on them, just for sensitive data and stuff they wouldn't want to get out there, and then just formatted the 500 gig drive. It was probably just used for storage, or it's possible the seller just slapped that 500 gig drive in there. I don't know. But that is the layout in terms of the components inside this thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an M.2 in there and then use that 500 gig drive for the extra storage in here. Now there's only 2 power sources in here. It comes off the motherboard, so the PSU runs into the board and then out. And one of them goes into the 500 gig drive, and then the other one goes into the DVD or optical drive in the front. So there's no extra ports. So it's another reason why it'd be good to use the M.2, since it doesn't require any external power. But you could just put a regular SATA SSD in here and just unhook the DVD drive and power it as well if you have one of those laying around. Now, since I said this probably had Windows 10 Pro on it, it has a Windows sticker on the back. When you buy Windows now, if you get like an OEM build with Windows, you have that operating system bound to this unit. So this unit has Windows 10 that can be installed on it for free, because when it gets on, when you do the installation process, it goes out on the internet, sees that this is part of the system, and it lets you install Windows 10 Pro from a USB drive, which I was using. So you don't have to pay for an operating system. I was going to go out and buy Windows 10 or 11 to stick on here, and I'm glad I didn't, because I'm like, man, this thing keeps registering itself. I hadn't installed a Windows in so long, it wasn't really that big. You know, it surprised me because I thought I'd have to buy one, and you don't. It looks at the hardware ID on the motherboard, and it knows that this motherboard has Windows 10 Pro, and it gives it to you. So that saves you $20 to $30 minimum if you would go out and buy it from a place like GVG Mall or something like that. So that's really, really cool. Keep in mind that since it's a 7th gen or older, Windows 11 doesn't by default install. There's ways of doing it, but it's just easier to put Windows 10 on since you own that and it works with it. Now for the graphics card, since this is so small, you need a low profile GPU. There's basically 3 options that I'm aware of. You got this RX550 low profile, which I got here, I'll show you in a minute. There's the NVIDIA GTX 1030, and then there's the newest one from AMD, the RX6400, which will be your best performer. But that can run as much 120 or 30 bucks just for one of those cards used. But what I picked up was the RX550. Now this is a 4 gig model. I believe the 6400 I'm sure probably comes with 8 gigs. And then the 1030s, those oftentimes are only 2 gigs. You have to be careful not to get the DDR4 variant. And this is 4 gigs of DDR4 memory. And this was about the same price as this, around 70 bucks. So about $140 to $150 in. This was, I believe, ship free, or maybe a couple of dollars, but around 150 bucks after taxes for both of these. And then again, if you're gonna put the M.2 in there, you're looking at, another 20, 30 bucks, and you're around 180. But you could do it this way again if you just use the spin drive. So this little graphics card will slap into the PCI Express. Of course, you need those low profiles, and you need one that obviously doesn't take an external power connector. Just because one, this PSU is not gonna be super powerful, and two, there's no extra pins for powering anything else in here. So this ought to be able to do 720p gaming in most modern titles at a decent frame rate, 1080p in some of the games like Valorant and Apex Legends, stuff like that. I think you can on performance type settings on this card. And if the game has FSR, this is going to certainly benefit in most resolutions from FSR, which is AMD's upscaling technology. All right, guys, that's the intro here on this. Let's get the camera repositioned, and I'll show you guys what we're going to do on the internals here. We're going to, I'm going to pull the CPU and verify that it is what it says it is. And we'll put a new bead of thermal paste on it. It's always a good idea to do that when you first get one of these, because you don't know the condition of that. That'll help make sure that thermals stay in check. We'll do that. Then we'll install that M.2 I had laying around, a 256 gig M.2 drive. And then we'll put the graphics card in, and then we'll get to the gaming benchmark. So be right back. All right, the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to lift up this tray that's got the 500 gig laptop drive in here. To do that, we're just going to pull back on this tab. The whole thing just hinges forward. We'll push that off to the side. Then we want to move the optical tray. So to do that, you have to move this little tab to the right. It'll show that the unlock position, and then the whole thing hinges forward. We'll set that off. That's got, as you can see, the DVD drive, and obviously it's not connected. Let's set that off to the side. Here we got our 2 sticks of RAM, 4 gigs in each one, so it is running in dual channel. I'm just going to spin this around here, so now you guys can see a little bit better. We have an M.2 right in here. I apologize, the camera is not the best angle. This is the best I can get. I would preferably like to have it a little bit higher. And what we're going to do now is we're going to put that M.2 drive in there. So it's very, very simple. You just simply put it in here, and it'll snap in, and then you're just going to put it down, and we'll have to pull this little tab, this little top, or whatever you want to call it up, little pin or whatever. A lot of these will use a screw, but this one has its own locking mechanism. You just press this down. It's very straightforward, and there it is. The drive is installed. This is really nice because it's going to be really quick. Then we're going to attach the SATA cable to the DVD drive. So I'm going to attach that now. So this, like this way here. And now we've got that attached, and let's go ahead and put it on. Let's go ahead and put it on SATA. It shouldn't matter. We got a SATA 0 here, it says. I'm just gonna go ahead and plug that in. Hopefully this cable will not be too much of a problem in the way. Now we also need to hook the power up. The power is gonna be over here. Here's that one power connector. So we're gonna go ahead and plug that in right here. And we're good to go. We're just going to put this back in the hinge, and then we'll put the whole thing will come down. And it may be a bit difficult with the RAM in there and all that to get it positioned, but it'll eventually go. It's just going to require a little bit of work on my end to get it down and locked in there. All right, I'll flip it around here, and then we'll work on that CPU here. But what we'll want to do is I just want to show you how you lock that, but we'll leave this off because we need a little more room to get into the CPU cooler to apply that new thermal paste. So we'll be right back. Now we just want to loosen up these screws here. Alright guys, we can see the thermal paste doesn't look too bad on here, to be honest with you. So we're going to clean that off, and then we'll clean it off of the both the CPU cooler and the CPU, and then we'll apply some new compound. Alright, got some rubbing alcohol in here. Let's just go ahead and just rub this thermal compound off. Boy, it's coming right off here very easily. And this is a i5 7500. It says it right on there. Let's see if it's going to be upside down, but let's see if we can zoom in here. That's a little bit too much. Then we're just going to go ahead and wipe it off of the CPU cooler. Get all this off. Nice and clean. Alright, this should be good. Now we'll just grab the new thermal compound and go ahead and apply a bead of that. Alright, CPU thermal compound here. They do come with this stuff I bought, actually comes with a little spatula feel. You could use it to spread it out evenly, but most people would recommend just put a pea-sized bead in the middle. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's apply some here in the middle. That should be an adequate amount. You don't want to apply too much and it's still gonna ooze it out. Try not to get it all over the board. And now we're just gonna go ahead and we're going to reapply or reconnect the CPU cooler. Get it in there without touching the thermal compound. Just bring it straight down here. Now we can start tightening it back up. Okay, so we got the CPU cooler reattached, and all the trays here, I made sure they're all nice and secure. The SATA cable that comes out of the optical drive, boy, it is not much room because it runs right up against this mounting post and screw for the CPU cooler. So it really has to bend quite a bit, but it should be fine. It is secure, it's just really bent. But you know, in the end of the day, it's just the optical drive, so it's not that huge of a deal. So what we're gonna do next now, let's go ahead and put the GPU in and mount that. All right guys, and last, let's get that RX550 GPU installed. This is the easiest. Well, the M.2 was super simple to do as well. You're just going to pull up on this clip on the rear. You're going to pull these inserts. I already had this off a while ago looking at it, so I misplaced. There was two of these little inserts in there. And then you're just going to mount the card right down here. This is going to be super simple. We're just going to line it up with the blue PCI Express. Get it lined up here and just press it down. Make sure I get it in right space here. You got to make sure you do get this little metal piece here in the right spot and just press it in, and there you go. And then you're just gonna go ahead and snap it down, and that's it. We are ready to go game with this. And obviously first we want to get Windows 10 installed on M.2. I'm not gonna show you that. That's something you can find anywhere how to do that. Once we get Windows 10 installed, then we'll show you some gaming benchmarks from the various suite of games that I have ready. So I'll be right back. First up, we have Battlefield 5, 720p low settings. So we're getting frame rates here somewhere in the mid 70s on average, peaks at around close to 90, but there are some valleys that you'll see here where the frame rate does drop considerably with some very slight stutters, but it's not too often to where it has much of an impact on gameplay. You could play this at 1080p if you're okay with frame rates closer to 40 to 45, but I think it's a much more enjoyable experience playing this at 720p, despite the slightly lower resolution and image quality compared to 1080p. Now we have Resident Evil Village. So we're playing at 1080p using FSR set to performance. And I'm getting frame rates around 60 FPS, a little bit over that at times, but didn't see any kind of really large dips. Now we're using FSR, as I mentioned, set to performance mode, so we're going to see a little bit of degradation in some of the quality. This is the fastest FSR mode. You could try some of the other modes. I did try quality and balance mode, but the frame rates were quite bad. In fact, the highest one I think was quality. The frame rate was actually worse with it on, so do keep that in mind. But overall, not a bad experience for Resident Evil Village. This is a very new title, and being that this system is, a few years old on both CPU and graphics, pretty happy with the way this turned out. Moving along to Valorant, 1080p at medium settings. And doing the training mission here at the very beginning, in an FPS between 120 and 140 on average, a little bit higher as we move along here. It started out around 120, but we see frame rates around 140. Very smooth playback, and this looks pretty good in 1080p medium settings. And now for some target practice. As you can see, frame rate is consistently around 140 FPS, but this is not a lot high action sequence scene, so of course the frame rate's going to drop off some, especially as we get into more competitive action with a lot of people or bots running around and a lot of shooting. And finally, we have Fortnite set to 1080p performance mode. And as I skydive in here, you can see a frame rate a little over 80 FPS, which is pretty nice. The performance mode really does help with this game. Of course, we're going to have some graphical sacrifices, but it gives us a nice smooth frame rate that makes it easier to play this game on lower end hardware. Now, I'm not the best at Fortnite, but I'm not very good at it at all, but as you can see, nice smooth playback for the most part, not seeing any kind of real glitches or anything like we saw in Battlefield 5. It looks pretty darn good. Alright, that wraps up this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I think this is a pretty darn good budget gaming build, especially for only $150. Gives some pretty darn good performance and a heck of a lot cheaper than buying a console. Alright guys, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Click that bell to be notified whenever I do upload a video. And as always guys, have a wonderful day.